Anti-Semitism is evil. Welcome to Law and Society. Let's talk about this. So, with the shooting in Sydney, in Bondi Beach, uh, over a dozen people have died, including one child. And, anti Semitism, which is defined as a hatred or a revulsion towards people of the Jewish faith, is one of the oldest forms of discrimination and prejudice that the world has ever seen. I mean, it's if you look at it from biblical times and how Egypt enslaved the Jewish tribe, to if you fast forward thousands of years and you go to the history of the word ghetto, and that was initially very in the very beginning used in Venice, where it was looked at as an area of the city that was sequestered administratively for Jewish people. Jewish people couldn't live anywhere else, and that's where they had to live. And that sort of ingrained anti-Semitism was part of society. So much so that you see even in the works of somebody who was forward thinking at that time, William Shakespeare, in the 1600s, talked about Shylock, and Shylock became this moneylender who is Jewish, who is asking for his pound of flesh in a court of law, and is made to be the villain in The Merchant of Venice, which is one of the basic foundational English literature texts that anybody reads or is taught in schools across the world. And it's the history of the ghetto, and then it develops from the 1500s. But then what happens is what happens with any time when you put a group of people who are talented, who are hardworking, who are of an ethnicity that they identify with, they become a community that flourishes. And wherever there were Jewish ghettos across Europe, they became thriving centers of education, of art, of culture, of being open society, and that is why, and accepting of others, and liberal in their nature, forgiving in their capacity to move forward despite the discrimination that they have historically been subjected to. These populations flourished no matter where they were sequestered throughout Europe. And then in the 1900s, when the Holocaust regime, when the Nazi regime went after the Jewish population, they found the ghetto system to be quite practical, because they could go and just target broad swaths of Jewish people because they were sequestered in parts of cities that were identifiable administratively. And we see this hatred towards Jewish people all over the world. It's from Australia to the heart of civilization to the United States. We see this prejudice that has followed this tribe of people, this nation of people who are hardworking, who are family oriented, who are exceedingly contributory to the progress of humanity, have always faced the envy of those who are less able. After these people who are less able to be successful have pointed the Jewish community out and sequestered them administratively into certain areas, and then they get jealous when they succeed. And then you have this notion that in some ways Jewish people think that they're better than others and therefore we are going to hurt them. Or this connection to Jewish people and the Jewish state that is Israel, or the only state in the world where Judaism is the official religion. But the Jewish, a country that was brought into being in 1960 or in the 1960s and was established as a state that had the official religion of Jewish people with the agenda of saying now the Jewish people have a homeland, has nothing to do other than their identity with being Jewish. So anybody who equates what Israel is doing in Gaza and the basic cruelty of starving children that is a consequence of what is happening in that area, when you condemn that, you are not condemning Judaism. You're not condemning people who are Jewish. You are condemning the tragedy that is happening there as a consequence of a conflict that was very much initiated by those who are anti-Semitic, going in on October 7th, a couple of years ago, and massacring and kidnapping thousands of Jewish people and traumatizing them and raping them. And then that caused the state of Israel to flare up. And we are now seeing anti-Semitism flare up around the world because of that connected hatred. And it makes it easy. Hating somebody, it just makes it easy for you to live your life and not take any responsibility for your not being as well off as those who are. Your hatred makes it easy for you to channel your anger towards people who are not to blame for your own failings or your base hatred that you have been inundated with and have acquiesced to as you have grown up. Yeah, I've read Merchant of Venice and I have felt people being anti-Semitic towards friends. I have felt the sting of being discriminated against myself, but that is a whole different issue. Anti-Semitism as an object of going after people because they are Jewish is inherently evil, because people who create the conditions for Jewish people to toughen it out and flourish then turn around and blame Jewish people for succeeding. Communities that are not doing so well on their own attack other communities so it's easier for them to get the anger off. So it's easier for them to justify that their hatred, that they're doing it on the basis of this historical precedent that the Jewish people are somehow not good. When in my understanding, I think that the Jewish community is one of the strongest built communities anywhere in the world, even if they are a small group of people. They stick together, they support one another, their communities flourish because they are open to other people who are accepting of their faith. They are giving, they are forgiving, and they flourish because they work hard. And that is a cause of envy and a cause of hatred for many. And that has morphed into becoming this demon that is spreading throughout the world because of information technology and because of the inundation that we face in our education systems. Like I said with Merchant of Venice, unless you go out and read about other countervailing texts about what it is like to be Jewish. Like there's this great book called The Bread Givers. I don't know who it is written by, but I have it. And It's a great fictional tale of how strong the Jewish community and the Jewish family is, and the role of women in Jewish communities. And so we get to see, unless we prod and unless we push back against the evil that is anti-Semitism, a very open condemnation of the Jewish people that has been ingrained into Western civilization, that has been ingrained into our communities in Europe, in America, in South America, in Australia, to a lesser extent in Asia, because the communities haven't flourished as much in Asia as in the other parts of the world. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Know that the Sydney attack and massacre is going to be remembered and talked about quite a bit, and it should be. And I think that we need to be vocal about hatred as not being the right vehicle to move us forward when the great forces around us and the powers that be are going in a different direction completely. That we are in a tumultuous transitional time where the world order that we have all known for the last 80 years no longer exists. And this sort of opportunistic evil of anti-Semitism and racism and bigotry and xenophobia and misogyny and sexism, it's all, and transphobia and homophobia, it's all going to bubble up. And we are going to have to withstand it all over again in the 21st century. But we have the tools in the 21st century to reach out to one another through technology and inform one another that what is happening is not normal. The hatred is not who we are as human beings, and that we need to think back to times of peace and then build our society to become peaceful through this moment of strife instead of falling apart, breaking apart, and becoming this spectrum-oriented, hemispheric, divisive, non-global order where you can't really deny globalism, but you become regional and you start creating spheres of power that go in conflict with one another, becoming the reason for why there are wars. So with that said, thank you for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.